Hey everyone, this is Peak Human Labs live. Sanjeev is in his office, and I happen to be in Orlando, Florida at Infocom conference. So, if you see people walking in the background, it's just because we're not together. But I'm here for an incredible conference. Sanjeev, we want to talk about social media and the relationship and impact on mental health. This is such, a an important topic because social media is impacted by young people in particular, and people of all ages really. So what can you share about some of the stats, the dark side of the social media thing that we need to be mindful of?
Well, I mean, everyone knows that there's been a major explosion in the use of social media in the last 15 years. It was only, I think, in 2007 that the iPhone came out. And I think about 100 million phones are being added on every month in the world. And, 3 billion people are on social media platforms like Facebook or Instagram. So, almost everybody's experience with the use of social media, and it looks like the average use of social media is about 2.5 hours per day, which is a huge amount of social media use. And so we don't exactly know what the impact of this is having on our brains. But what we do
Right.
know is that there seems to be more anxiety and depression amongst people in society in general. Suicides have climbed. Here's a stat: 57% from 2007 to 2017, so a huge jump. And so the number of researchers have been looking at the impact of social media on our mental health. And there's a couple of studies I can talk about. The one was in 2018 by Melissa Hunt, a psychologist, who looked at 143 undergraduates from University of Pennsylvania. And what they did was they randomized people to a 10 minutes per day of social media use, or use it as usual, like use it your usual way. And what
Right.
they did was that I think it was after a few months, they looked and they saw what was the change in their anxiety and depression. And they found that there was definitely a decreased depression in those who were using the social media for 10 minutes. And even those who were just using it as per usual, there's still decreased depression compared to what they were before the study. So,
So are you saying that they intentionally limited the amount of social media to 10 minutes a day
yeah.
rather than the 2 hours? And frankly, I actually think it's more than 2 hours for a lot of people, maybe myself included. I don't know. Because it was funny on iPhone in particular, you can actually see the amount of time that you spend on certain platforms.
Mhm.
And I remember during the pandemic, I spent hours and hours on this app called Clubhouse.
Right.
Okay, the
Clubhouse, yeah.
audio app, and it was. I didn't want to really say how much time I had spent on that app. Now, mind you, middle of the pandemic, but that's a habit that people aren't aware of.
Yeah.
I, to your point, one stat I wanted to mention, it says here 69% of adults and 81% of teens use social media. That's a lot of people.
Like I said, half the world's population is on social media. Back to the study, I just want to say, so the results showed that those who were in the 10 minutes per day had way less depression and less FOMO, so FOMO, fear of missing out, than those who were at the very beginning of the study. So, and those who are using it usually. So it definitely, you cutting your social media down seemed to improve the depression and decrease FOMO. So that was what really, this was a study back in 2018, and there's been a number of studies after that that have also shown this association between anxiety, depression, and FOMO, and the use of social media.
Yeah, I think we should identify what are the things that are actually causing people this anxiety and depression. They're specifically related to what we've learned is the comparison syndrome, right? And I definitely want to comment on that because for some people who look at social media or other people's lives, that fear of missing out, you have to understand that what people post is may not always be what is accurate. And while someone is thinking, oh my gosh, this person has a better life, a hotter body, happier relationship, that is what is being put out, but may not even necessarily be true. What is something, Dr. Sanjeev, that you would recommend to someone who's looking and comparing themselves to other people? Why are they having these feelings about it?
Well, no, I think this is very natural. I mean, this is the problem with social media because it presents everyone in their best light, and now with everyone's filters and all that, this is not even. It's like what used to be concerns about what was in magazines, and we used to say, hey, you know what? People want to aspire to what the magazine look was, and now we see in social media it's even more than the magazine. It's everything that's happening in the lifestyle, what people are eating, where they're traveling, possessions they have, their friends and experiences. So it's very difficult. I think all one can do is again cut down this amount of social media. No one's expecting that you can be zero. That doesn't seem reasonable, but I think the cutting down of it can definitely be a help, and that's what the studies are showing. So I think we can just tell
Right.
people to do that. And
Now, with so many social media platforms, and I did watch a special, I forget the name of it. I will try to remember and put it in our notes. But there was a special on Netflix about companies literally fighting for attention to get your eyeballs. And a lot of that has to do with the dopamine hit. Can you explain to our listeners and our viewers what is impacted when we feel good and we look at something that is how does dopamine impact our mental health?
yeah, so dopamine is one of the neurotransmitters. It's called the reward neurotransmitter. So it means whenever something pleasurable happens, dopamine gets released in your brain, which then gives you that sense of pleasure. And in effect, we chase, like some people chase more than others. They have that kind of addictive personality that they may have more of a dopamine hit than somebody else. So it doesn't work on everyone the exact same, but this dopamine pathway isn't present in everybody's brain. And so it becomes a loop, a feedback loop. And so let's say you get a like on your Instagram photo, a slight hit of dopamine happens, you go back, you get maybe 10 more likes, and then you kind of crave that like. So you post again to get more likes. So those are little dopamine hits. They happen other ways too. People get dopamine hits from like, having sugar, or they like, maybe an exercise high. That could be a dopamine hit too. Some are healthy, some are, healthy for you, and some are not so healthy. So it's again not a question of, completely avoiding dopamine hits, because that's what motivates us in life to go search for pleasure. But it's
Yes.
when it gets
So
out of control is the concern. That's
so when
that's
does oxytocin ever come into play when it comes to social media at all, or is that more
I'm not sure oxytocin is considered the love molecule. I'm not 100% sure how it would relate.
how
This is
that
more of
works?
a dopamine issue, and that's more found in addiction, and
Okay.
that's what's happening. People are sometimes people will say, "Hey, you know what? How do we know?" Yes, they're related. People who are on social media tend to have some more depression or anxiety. How do we know that the depressed people aren't just going onto social media more? How do we know that's not the case? That people ask that question. And so they did a study, looking at, does social media actually cause anxiety and depression, because right now it's associated. And so they looked at the rollout of Facebook across different states in the US, and they looked at rates of mental illness, depression, and anxiety. And they found that as Facebook was being rolled out into these states, rates of anxiety and depression were increasing, and people are having more problem in school. So that's really an interesting study. I'll put the link up. Let me just see if I have it right here. The name of that study here. That was a study by Luca Bragieri in July 2022, social media and mental health, where um, they basically looked at the Facebook rollout and its impact
Yeah.
on mental health. So now we have like an actual, like, yes, it causes it, because people can always make this thing,
Absolutely.
hey, say, hey, how do we know that these people were depressed from before, and they just went on social media more because they're just more depressed. It doesn't.
Well, that being said, with Facebook being really a data supply, a data center to look at all those things, I'm looking at an MIT study. I'll put that in, that basically said Facebook access leads to more anxiety and depression. 70%, 7% college-wide Facebook access led to increase in severe depression
Mhm.
among students. And that's, again, we're not trying to poo-poo Facebook here, okay? I'm sure that it also applies to TikTok or YouTube or
Oh yeah,
Instagram,
maybe be
right?
more. It may be more on what these new. This again, these studies are older, and they had Facebook, but nowadays, people are using different platforms. It doesn't really matter what the platform is. When people are using it for social media, it's, I think, relatively the same.
Yeah, yeah. My last question: with the increase of anxiety and depression, because you're talking about hormones, what is the effect of increased cortisol in one's body because they have more stress and anxiety, and what can we do about that?
Well, yeah. So the stress hormone is cortisol or adrenaline. That's a slightly different hormone. Adrenaline is more for acute. Like let's say you see a tiger or something, then you'll have this epinephrine or adrenaline rush.
Okay.
But for chronic stress, that's a cortisol being released by the adrenal glands, and it's there to protect you. But if you have chronic cortisol being released from your adrenal glands, it can cause you to initially you'll be have more energy, but it can cause you to feel drained and tired and have lack of energy. And it has a number of effects on your metabolism. Have you problems with losing weight potentially? So there has a lot of repercussions. And I think again, this is a new science. We don't exactly know because there's no one's really done a study to look at long-term cortisol rates and disease. Nobody really has done that study, but it doesn't seem to be a healthy thing to be in a constant state of panic or stress. That's not good for the body, because it leads to more inflammation and
Yeah.
potential diseases in the
I
future.
agree. There are times that when I look at social media, I have to turn it off because I find myself thinking, maybe I myself, not just in that comparison syndrome, but like I'm wasting a lot of time, or I'm seeing a combination of positive things, and then I'm seeing things that I wish I didn't even see. Like my eyes can't unsee what I just saw. So that's the issue.
Right.
But lack of control on social media as you're following different people, because things become visible to you, to your children, that you may not want to see or view. So thank you so much for this really important discussion. If you've heard from Sanjeev, limit the amount of exposure that you have on social media. Know that everything you see isn't exactly what it is. So don't compare yourself and your life to someone else. You really don't know if that's the case. So
Yeah, I want to say that people, if they can, one of the things you can do is take control of what is being put in front of you. So that means that if there's somebody that you don't want to be seeing their feed, remove it. Like remove ads
correct.
and stuff. You can just say I don't want to see this anymore. Put filters on. It's important that you take charge of what is people are take charge of what's grabbing your attention, because your attention is your most valuable asset. So really, nobody, that's all we can do is have some control on that piece. The other thing I want to bring up is this idea of I'm going to be launching a project on techno fasting. This idea, how we fast against for food, but also having periods of fasting from technology.
I
And
love that
yeah,
techno fasting.
it's a whole other
It's kind
whole
of,
other thing. But I think this is an idea that's
I'm
time.
a little scared, but like I'm on board. I'm
Well,
on
we didn't
board
say
for
how
techno.
long it has to be for. We could even do it for 10 minutes because it looks like people are on their phone, every minute of the day. So even 10-minute break is a good thing. Sometimes when my kids, the phone is just about to discharge or it's away from them, they get anxious. So I can just tell you that, and this is a common thing. It's not even just my kids, but I'm just telling you that it's quite common. And so anything we can do to just reduce our,
Yeah.
preoccupation with the
On
cell
that
phone.
note, the 2 bar panic attack is happening to me right now. My anxiety and cortisol is going through the roof. Sanjeev, thank you so much. If you guys want to hear more about techno fasting perhaps that'll be something that we'll talk about in a future episode.
Yeah.
You know, please like, subscribe, share this to anybody that you know could use a little social media detox or know more about the impact of mental health and social media. We'll be back again for more information on this in the future. Thanks,
All right.
Angie.
Take care,
Bye.
everyone. Bye bye.